And it's not just the kids receiving special education services now who are struggling. Students in the general education population are also struggling. They're starting to break under the pressures of COVID. And one of the things that we see over and over again, what happens when kids start to break and they act out, what happens? Lots of people show up claiming that it's 100% the parents' fault. Jeremy,
or that this is why these kids shouldn't like be in these shouldn't be in inclusion classrooms, or we get a lot of that as well.
And I'm not even talking about the students receiving special education services. I'm talking about the general education students when they break under all of the pressures that are being put on them. You know, there's always someone who's willing to stand up and say it's 100% the parent's fault, 100% the parent's fault. Jeremy, as a parent, what's your take on this tendency to want to blame parents when the system fails their children?
I haven't experienced that. If I have, I don't remember it. But at least not in the schools. We certainly have encountered that from other people about our children. I think if teachers, this is kind of a very typical cognitive bias that affects people. If they see that they're doing something with one kid and they're doing the same thing with another kid, and they see it working with one kid and it's not working with another kid, they think that it's not what they're doing that's the problem, when it might well be that what they're doing needs to be different with that kid. They can't just think that if it works with another kid, it's going to work with every kid. And I wonder if that's partly what lies behind this. They think, well, it can't be what I'm doing because what I'm doing works fine with the other kids. So it must be something about them. And I'm not sure how that gets to the parents, though, because what are all the other factors it could be, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. What are all the other factors? I'm just going to come right out and say it. Trying to blame parents is 100% a cop-out. You know, that gives someone a get out of jail free card from actually looking at what all the complex factors are that are going into students having a breakdown in a school building. So it's a mess, y'all. It's a mess. Families have been taking it on the chin the entire time during the pandemic. As our children go back to in-person learning, we're still having to deal with the breakdown of the system that's supposed to support us and educate our children. And especially for students receiving special education services, the system can't handle it. It can't handle them. And even though we're getting an influx of funding in order to educate all of the children, there's still this complete breakdown of the system that is supposed to do that. And it doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve the general education students. It has never really served the students receiving special education services. And this continues to be an issue. And it's really time for people to think hard and carefully about what are the solutions. Why is there a shortage of teachers? Could it be because of a lack of leadership and a lack of support for educators? Not among parents, but the people who are actually their leaders, who are supposed to be supporting them and backing them up and advocating for them. Could that be part of the problem? I think so. Could poor working conditions be part of the problem? Why we have a lack of qualified educators working with students with disabilities? Yes, I think so. And no, you can't blame the children for the poor working environment, because it's the adults who are supposed to be making a thriving working and learning environment for students and staff. So if you're out there and it is your inclination to want to blame parents, that doesn't really help. That doesn't move us toward finding solutions for how to support students and how to support the people who are working with them, such that the whole school building isn't literally or figuratively on fire. We've had some literal fires in school buildings here in Syracuse. And the finger pointing and the casting blame just is not helping. And the students receiving special education services in those buildings, they're not getting the education that they need.